When a woman realizes a man has lost interest, something very unexpected happens. And today, that's exactly what we're talking about. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here, because this is one of those topics that most people feel but rarely say out loud. It's emotional, it's uncomfortable, and for many men, it's confusing. In therapy, I've seen this moment change relationships in ways neither person expected. I've watched strong women suddenly feel fragile. Confident women start questioning themselves. And women who walked away suddenly become the ones trying to pull a man closer. When a man goes silent, when the emotional energy shifts, or when he finally stops chasing, many women notice it long before they ever admit it. They feel it, and their reactions are rarely simple. This might sound controversial, but losing interest doesn't always make a woman relieved. More often, it challenges her sense of control, connection, and emotional validation. I've sat with men who thought walking away would mean nothing to her, only to later find out she was spiraling inside. I've also talked with women who admitted that they only realized how much they cared when the attention disappeared. You need to understand something. When a woman senses that your energy has changed, she will respond. Maybe quietly, maybe dramatically, maybe in ways that don't make sense on the surface. She might question her worth, your intentions, or even the history you shared. She might become distant, or she might unexpectedly come closer. It depends on who she is, what she felt, and what she believed about you. So stay with me, because we're going to talk about what really happens under the surface. Not the guesswork, not the social media clichés, just the raw human reactions that I've seen unfold in real life. Let's begin. 1. When silence becomes louder than words, there is a moment in every relationship where the energy shifts long before the conversation does. As a therapist, I've watched women describe it in ways that are almost poetic. They don't always notice the absence of words first. They notice the absence of warmth, the way a man's voice used to soften, the way he used to ask how her day was, the way he used to sound interested, even in the small, insignificant details. When that fades, the silence becomes louder than anything he could possibly say. What makes this moment powerful is that women often feel emotional changes faster than men express them. I've listened to women say things like, "I don't know why, but something feels off." She begins scanning your responses, replaying conversations in her head, comparing yesterday to today. Even if you never announce your disinterest, she senses the absence of effort. A missed call that once would have been returned quickly now sits unanswered. Texts feel shorter. You used to respond with emotion, now it feels like you're responding out of obligation. This silence triggers something deeper in her. It challenges her sense of emotional stability. She begins asking questions, not always out loud, but in her mind. Did I do something wrong? When did things change? Why doesn't he look at me the way he used to? In therapy, I've seen women who claim to be strong and confident suddenly doubt themselves, not because he said something hurtful, but because he said nothing at all. And the irony is that silence can feel more painful than rejection. Rejection gives closure. Silence gives uncertainty. Women will often tell me that it's not the distance that hurts, it's the not knowing why it appeared. Many will try to pull you close just to understand what happened. She might ask more questions, or she might become unusually sensitive. Some even pretend not to care, but inside they're struggling with the sudden emotional gap. The silence also exposes the truth of the connection. When a man loses interest, he stops giving the small pieces of emotional attention that once made her feel chosen. And when those pieces disappear, she feels the loss more intensely than she expected. I've seen women who were ready to walk away become emotional the moment they feel a man detach. Not because they suddenly love him more, but because silence reminds them that they are no longer the priority they once believed they were. So believe me when I say this. Your silence speaks. It speaks to her insecurity, her curiosity, her pride, and sometimes her deepest fears. Even without saying a word, she hears you loud and clear. 2. The sudden shift in her confidence. When a woman realizes a man has lost interest, one of the first internal changes happens quietly, and it happens inside her confidence. Now, it's important to understand this clearly. Women are not weak, and they are not automatically shattered by rejection. But emotional connection carries weight, And when a man who once cared suddenly becomes distant, it can shake even the strongest woman in ways she rarely shows on the surface. As a therapist, I've sat across from women who appeared confident, successful, emotionally grounded, yet the moment a man's attention faded, their voice changed. They spoke more softly, questioned themselves more, and replayed every interaction in their mind. Men often underestimate how deeply women analyze emotional details. You might think you simply got busy or lost interest silently, but in her world, small changes feel like emotional earthquakes. Many men assume women only lose confidence when a relationship is toxic or dramatic, but that's not always true. Sometimes all it takes is a sudden emotional shift. When a woman feels wanted, desired, and emotionally valued, her confidence naturally rises. When that feeling disappears, she starts comparing the present version of herself to the version he used to adore. That comparison is what hurts the most. Let me teach you something most men don't know. Women rarely ask themselves, "What's wrong with him?" When a man pulls away, their first instinct is, "What changed about me?" Even women with healthy self-esteem can fall into this emotional trap. She wonders if she's less attractive, less interesting, less appreciated. She might check her messages more often, take longer to respond, or even change her behavior, just to see if you react. This is where many men misinterpret the situation. They think she's becoming clingy, dramatic, or overly emotional. In reality, she is trying to protect her confidence. She wants answers. Your emotional shift forces her into self-reflection she didn't ask for. She wonders if you met someone else, if you're bored, or if the relationship was only temporary for you. I've had women tell me they felt embarrassed for caring more than he did. Embarrassed for trying. Embarrassed for noticing his distance before he ever admitted it. And that embarrassment becomes a wound to her confidence. But here's the part most men never realize. When her confidence shifts, her behavior shifts too. She may become colder, sarcastic, or distant. Not because she stopped caring, but because she's protecting what's left of her self-worth. Some women pull back as a defense mechanism. Others try harder, hoping to revive the connection. A few will pretend they don't care at all, even while falling apart emotionally. So if a man decides to walk away, that's his right. But silence, mixed signals, or emotional withdrawal without honesty can damage her far more than he ever sees. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to stay in a relationship you don't want. It simply means that emotional changes have consequences, even when no one speaks a word. 3. Her need to understand what changed. There comes a point when a woman can no longer ignore the shift. She's felt the distance. She's seen the silence. And even if she tries to stay calm on the outside, something inside her needs answers. Men often underestimate this stage. They assume she will just move on, accept the situation, or take the hint. But emotional connections don't disappear with a few ignored messages or colder conversations. When a woman realizes a man has lost interest, her mind immediately begins searching for clarity. In therapy, I've watched this happen so many times. A woman sits across from me trying to make sense of everything. She doesn't want to chase, she doesn't want to beg, but she wants to understand. Not because she's desperate, but because emotional confusion feels unfinished. Most women would rather hear a painful truth than live with unanswered questions. This part is crucial for men to understand. When you used to care, when you called, listened, laughed, or shared real intimacy, you created an emotional world she trusted. Losing interest without explanation feels like that world has been shaken without warning. It's not just about feelings, it's about the sudden break in emotional consistency. Human beings rely on patterns to feel safe. When the pattern breaks, the mind starts searching for reasons. She might replay old conversations, looking for the moment the shift began. She might ask subtle questions just to see how you respond. She might even bring up random topics just to test your level of interest. But she's not trying to bother you. She's trying to understand you. And she wants to understand why a man who once cared so deeply now feels disconnected. Some men respond by pulling back even more. They think giving space will make everything easier. They believe silence is kinder than honesty. But what they don't realize is that silence forces her into emotional detective work. She fills in the blanks with her own fears. She assumes the worst because you gave her nothing to hold on to. And here's the surprising part. In many sessions, I've heard women say, "If he had just told me the truth, I would have respected it." They don't always want you back. They don't always want to change your mind. They just want closure that feels human, not cold. A woman's need to understand what changed isn't about control. It's about dignity. She wants to leave the situation knowing she wasn't imagining the connection. She wants to know she mattered, even if only for a chapter. When men avoid this moment, they forget that silence leaves scars too. So when she asks what happened, when she becomes quieter but more observant, when she tries to talk before walking away, she's not being dramatic. She's proving she has a heart, and losing interest is allowed. But disappearing without clarity doesn't end things peacefully. It ends them with confusion, and confusion always finds a way to follow both people long after the relationship is gone. 4. When curiosity turns into pursuit, I once worked with a woman who thought she was completely secure in her relationship. She wasn't overly emotional, she didn't chase, she didn't obsess. She felt loved. She felt chosen. Then, almost without warning, her partner changed. His messages became shorter, his voice less warm, his effort almost invisible. He didn't say anything was wrong. He didn't end the relationship. He just slowly disappeared emotionally. At first, she didn't panic. She told herself he was busy, stressed, distracted. But as the days passed, her curiosity became impossible to ignore. Curiosity is often the first step before pursuit. It wasn't about needing him. It was about needing truth. The same man who once checked in every morning now answered like a stranger. She didn't want to explode, accuse, or beg. She just wanted clarity. And that's where many men misunderstand the shift. When a woman feels the emotional distance, she might start leaning forward instead of stepping away. Not because she's desperate, but because confusion pushes her into action. She might call more often, ask deeper questions, or suddenly become more affectionate. Men often take this as neediness, but I've seen what's happening beneath the surface. She's trying to pull honesty out of him. She wants to know whether she should fight for the relationship or let it go. The woman I mentioned didn't chase him because she couldn't live without him. She chased because silence felt disrespectful to the history they shared. She wanted to know if she did something wrong or if he simply didn't love her anymore. She told me something that would surprise most men. She said, "If he just told me he wasn't interested, I would have walked away with dignity. But the silence made me feel like I was begging for answers I deserved." This happens more often than men realize. A woman pulls closer not because she's weak, but because the relationship meant something to her. Before she walks away, she needs the truth. She might ask, "Is everything okay?" Or, "Did something change?" She's not interrogating. She's trying to give you a chance to be honest, even if the truth hurts. And here's the interesting twist. When curiosity becomes pursuit, the power in the relationship shifts. The man who once felt in control suddenly realizes she's looking for answers he's avoiding. Some men feel guilt, others feel pressure. A few panic and distance themselves even more. But eventually, when she understands there are no answers coming, curiosity dies and self-respect takes over. Women never stay in pursuit forever. They only pursue until they see there is nothing left to save. The woman from my sessions eventually stopped asking, stopped calling, and stopped caring. She grieved privately, calmly, and quietly, and when she finally let go, the man came back, shocked by her silence. But by then, her curiosity was gone, and his mattered more. That's how quickly the emotional tables can turn. 5. The emotional confusion she hides. When a woman realizes a man has lost interest, confusion becomes her quiet battle. She doesn't always cry, she doesn't always confront, and she doesn't always show her pain. In fact, most of the emotional struggle happens in silence. Men often look at her and think she's fine because she's smiling, laughing, or acting normal. But emotional confusion doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks calm, polite, and distant. And that's where many men make mistakes. A common wrong response men give is pretending nothing has changed. They respond with cold, short answers, hoping she'll figure it out on her own. Some men say, "I've just been busy," even when the truth is they've checked out emotionally. Others give vague excuses, or worse, they become irritated when she asks simple questions. This leaves her feeling like the problem when in reality, she's reacting to uncertainty. Another mistake is disappearing without explanation. Silence may feel easier for him, but for her, it feels like emotional abandonment. When a man suddenly stops caring, stops calling, or stops showing interest, she starts blaming herself. She wonders whether she wasn't enough, whether someone else replaced her, or whether she imagined the connection entirely. That confusion can damage her self-esteem in ways a simple conversation could have prevented. Some men go even further. They keep her close just enough so she doesn't walk away, but never close enough to feel wanted. They like the attention, but not the commitment. They enjoy the comfort, but not the responsibility. This emotional limbo is one of the most painful places a woman can exist. She stays because she cares, but she suffers because she doesn't understand. So what's the right thing to do instead? Honesty. Not brutal honesty, not cruel honesty, just respectful honesty. A man can say, "I feel myself pulling away and I don't want to hurt you," or "I care about you, but I don't feel the same anymore." These words may not feel comfortable, but they give her clarity. And clarity is kindness. Another right approach is acknowledging the connection you once shared. You don't have to pretend it meant nothing. You can say, "You are a good person and what we had mattered to me, but my feelings changed." Statements like that protect her dignity. They remind her that she wasn't foolish for caring. If a man is unsure about his feelings, he can communicate that too. "I'm trying to figure out where I am emotionally" is far better than coldness or silence. It gives her the respect of being included in the truth instead of being left guessing. In the end, men often forget something simple. Women don't expect perfection. They don't expect guarantees, but they do expect honesty. Emotional confusion is painful, but clarity, even painful clarity, gives her the chance to heal, rebuild confidence, and move forward with strength instead of doubt. 6. How she tests your emotional distance. When a woman senses a man has lost interest, she doesn't always walk away immediately. Before she lets go, she often tests the situation, not out of manipulation, but out of emotional self-protection. She needs to know whether her instincts are right. Men sometimes misinterpret this as games, but in reality, she's trying to measure the truth without openly begging for it. I've seen women do this many times in therapy. A woman will tell me, "I just needed to see how he would respond." She asks a small question to check your tone. She suggests a plan to see if you still care enough to show up. She pulls back slightly to see if you notice or chase. This isn't about control. It's about clarity. She wants to know whether the relationship is fading because of her imagination or because your heart has already left. What's interesting is that the tests aren't dramatic. They're subtle. She might stop initiating conversations just to see if you will. She might take a little longer to reply, not because she wants to punish you, but because she wants to see if your interest has truly disappeared. If you don't notice the distance, her answer becomes painfully clear. Men often label this behavior as acting different, but it's actually emotional research. Women don't want to embarrass themselves by caring more than the person they're with. These tests protect her dignity. If she sees you didn't care enough to react, she knows she needs to detach quietly. There's another kind of test that men overlook, the emotional test. She may open up about something small just to see if you still offer comfort. If you respond coldly, dismissively, or without interest, she learns everything she needs to know. When a woman realizes her emotions are no longer safe with you, she stops sharing them. And when emotional intimacy dies, the relationship is already halfway gone. Some women test the distance by bringing up the past affection you once gave, not to manipulate, but to understand. She might say, "You used to call every night," and if your response is defensive or careless, she knows the connection has shifted permanently. It isn't the change that hurts her as much as the indifference. Men sometimes misunderstand these moments and think she's starting drama, but she's not. She's trying to give you a chance to show that you still care. Every small test is her way of asking, should I keep my heart here or should I take it back? And here's the part men rarely see. If you fail these tests, she starts preparing her exit silently. Women don't always leave loudly. Most leave emotionally first, then physically later. So when she tests your distance, she's not trying to trap you. She's trying to protect herself from the silent breakup she feels coming. If you still care about her, this is the moment to speak honestly, show effort, or rebuild connection. If you don't, she will understand, and she will walk away with her self-respect intact. 7. When pride and vulnerability collide, there is a powerful moment in every relationship where a woman realizes the truth. The man she cared for is no longer emotionally present. And when that reality sinks in, two sides of her battle each other at the same time. Pride and vulnerability collide. She wants to protect herself, but she also wants to understand why the connection changed. This emotional conflict creates behavior that men often misunderstand. I've seen women describe this moment with a quiet kind of heartbreak. She doesn't want to chase him, but her heart wants answers. She doesn't want to look weak, but she can't pretend the distance doesn't hurt. This is where her pride steps forward. Pride tells her not to give him the satisfaction of knowing she's affected. Pride tells her to stay strong, be silent, and move on without showing a single tear. But vulnerability still lives inside her. Vulnerability reminds her of the memories, the late-night conversations, the trust she gave, the way she once felt safe with him. Vulnerability makes her want to text him, call him, or ask what went wrong. Some days pride wins. Other days vulnerability takes over. That emotional push and pull is exhausting, and most women experience it alone. Men will notice something interesting during this stage. She might go from warm to cold, from talkative to distant, from caring to detached. It's not because she stopped loving, it's because she's trying to protect whatever pieces of her heart are left. When pride kicks in, she starts rebuilding the emotional walls she once lowered for him. She stops sharing her feelings. She stops trying to fix things. She stops fighting for the connection. And once a woman reaches that point, she's already letting go. What many men don't realize is that this quiet detachment is her final act of dignity. She won't argue, she won't beg, she won't chase. She simply removes herself emotionally, then physically. Women rarely leave when they're angry. They leave when they're tired of feeling unwanted, unseen, or unimportant. And here's the twist most men never expect. Once her pride takes over fully, she becomes harder to reach. The man who ignored her may try to return later, but by then, vulnerability has disappeared and pride has taken permanent control. The same woman who once cared deeply now guards herself with silence. Men often come back when they sense she's truly gone. They feel the absence of her effort, her affection, her presence, but they don't realize that she didn't leave suddenly. She left inch by inch every time her heart was met with indifference. So when pride and vulnerability collide, it's not drama, it's survival. She's learning how to live without the person she once believed in. And once she learns that she can, she rarely looks back. When a woman realizes a man has lost interest, the reactions aren't random, dramatic, or exaggerated. They are human, they are emotional. They come from a place of loyalty, connection, and vulnerability. Some fight for answers, others suffer quietly, and a few walk away with no explanation at all. But in every case, the experience changes her. It teaches her what silence really means. It teaches her how to love differently. And eventually, it teaches her to let go. So if a man chooses to leave emotionally, he should understand that his silence doesn't just end a relationship, it shapes the woman he walked away from.